Hello everybody, and welcome back. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and I come to you on the eve of my vacation, but also on the heels of a fantastic new patch that I'm very excited to show off to you guys. And so, let's take a look at all of the things that are new. Visually, gameplay-wise, there's going to be some new units in the field. It's all very exciting. So, I'm going to be playing as the realm of ANGBAND today, and probably one of the biggest changes that affects ANGBAND, the Fallothrim, and a few other factions like the Halidin, most of all, is that units have gotten a little bit cheaper. At least the mid-tier units have. They've gone down in price by between 8 to 10% right across the board, and it has opened up a lot of extra customization options, both in terms of what you can do with your individual units, but also what you can bring in your greater armies overall. So once this patch launches, I think it is very likely that you'll be seeing more 20 stacks, so full armies from everybody on the field, which means more moving pieces, more micro acquired, more everything, really. And it really just makes for some fantastic, epic battles. And so, let's take a look at my army comp here. I've got a couple of Thralls of ANGBAND. I've also got 3 units of Reavers of Anfauglith. You're going to see a very good showing from them today, especially in terms of their staying power, because I give them chevrons. So there's going to be 3 of them, chevrons, attack upgrades. I've also brought some Iron Drakes on the field today. More of a niche unit. You don't see too much from them, but they do some serious work in this battle. I brought 3 units of the Iron Shot Legionaries. They have no upgrades other than attack and defense. There's going to be 3 of them in total. But then I've got 3 units of the Iron Shod Halberdiers, and they are going to be rolling with full upgrades, including 1 chevron, which is going to make them hit extra hard and be extra difficult to get rid of. I've also got some Bulldogs who are hanging around in here. The Bulldogs, I can't remember if this is a change on live or not, but they do have the ability to upgrade their armor twice now, so they'll go from 10 to 14, which greatly increases their survivability. I don't know if it's exactly the 40% increase that it would normally be, but that would be like mathematically, but it is a very significant and noticeable difference. You're going to see it in this fight today as well. I've also brought some Uruloki. We're bringing back the Elephant Flare in this battle. And the Uruloki have gotten, well, no significant buffs other than a couple of extra hit points. So they've gone from 10 to 12 HP. Helps them stick around a little bit longer and just generally be a worthy investment outside of their missile damage. And then perhaps one of the more significant changes is that the elephant unit sizes have basically increased across the board by +2, which is a significant jump, which will hopefully mean that you'll see many more elephants in your battles once this patch comes to term. At the moment, there are quite a lot of soft counters and a few hard counters and many more new ones that have been added into the mod with this new patch. In particular, Valinor is very good at dealing with monsters, and so the monsters should probably get more powerful in order to avoid being sort of pushed into obsolescence through no fault of their own. And so, we've gone from 3 to 5 Valraukar, and you're going to see some mighty, mighty damage from those fearsome beasts. I've also got 2 full units of Iron Shot Arbalists, a unit of Wretches. They're hanging out here somewhere. They're around. We'll see them eventually. There are my Bulldogs. They're just chilling in the back. And I've also brought a Mangonel. The Mangonel's had a few changes to them, mostly in the number of projectiles that it can fire. So it will fire its projectile, instead of breaking into 27, it's going to go up to 35, which means more spread, more damage, more value out of your Mangonel at the end of the day. The crew, in addition, this is one of the smaller UI changes. You can see that when you buy artillery, you'll be able to know exactly what is crewing it. So it's no longer guesswork or just learning it rote memorization style. Now we're just going to straight up tell you, which is probably what we should have done in the first instance. But they've also increased in size from 100 to 150, and they are now Orc Legionaries instead of a crossbowless contingent of the Arbalists. So now they're a little bit more of a reserve infantry unit after you've used them, and it is quite handy indeed. That's going to do for my army. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the Elves of Doriath. And they've actually got some pretty significant changes, mostly tuned towards making them a little bit better against Valinor, because Valinor is a big stumbling block for them at the moment. We haven't had a chance to really test these thoroughly, as this is the first battle we did on this new patch. But hopefully it does end up with Valinor versus Doriath matchups being a little bit closer instead of it just being a hard counter. I'm fine if it's difficult for Doriath, but it probably shouldn't be quite so difficult as it was. But in any case, Axemen of the Girdle, got some Doneth and Mablung here as well. Got some Wardens of the Girdle who now have the Shield Breaker trait, which allows them to ignore half shield value from the front. And they've also had their cap increased from 3 to 4, so now you can bring more of them, particularly useful for countering those pesky Valinor Slingers, which can otherwise be very scary indeed. The Axe Guard of Region currently awaiting a new medium armor model. As you can see, that they've been dropped from heavy to medium infantry. They start at a base armor value of 5, and they can upgrade twice, all the way up to 9, which puts them 1 armor above where they were, but also confers an extra point of melee defense and a little bit of extra speed. So they're faster, they're more survivable in melee. The trade-off is that their base unit stats make them a little bit more vulnerable to missiles, but you can increase that to greater than what it was previously, as long as you're willing to invest in them. And since everything is a little bit cheaper, this goes across the board for all mid-tier units, including these girdle ones, it is an investment that you can afford to make. And Carmondai has brought several regiments of them today. I've got some Rangers of the Girdle over here as well. There are 2 of them on the field, a whole bunch of Spear Hosts, and behind them some Shield Bearers, and then finally, probably at least 2 units of Warriors. And the Warriors have gotten the same treatment, although I have forgot to change their classification from heavy to medium, but they basically follow the same rules that I just outlined for the Axe Guard. In the back here, we've also got the Ballista. Its name is currently incorrect because I got a little bit confused while modding late at night. But the Ballista has had its ammunition doubled, so it's gone from 10 to 20. You now should see more of them. They're a little bit less accurate to compensate for the amount of ammunition that they now have, but it is still a fairly accurate unit. And you can use them for sniping some of the big elephant units or for sniping artillery. Really just hopefully brings the Ballista back to the field. In any case, moving on now, we have the Kuthalim, who now have a different base model. They will upgrade into the silver one that we all know and love, but this is the base look for the Kuthalim. And they are still the very scary archers that they once were. And in this particular instance, you can see Beleg Kuthalion leading the unit for which he is named, and then Engul, his liege lord, in behind him. They'll be leading from the front today. Got some more Wardens in behind the line, and that basically does it for the Doriath army, except for the fact that I think I missed their legendary company. Yes, indeed I did. The Tiren Lais Danen, you'll see them right there. They are no longer armor piercing, but they do have the shield breaker trait, and they have a little bit extra ammunition, so they'll do more damage over time, but they just won't do it up front. Otherwise, basically the same unit that you know and love with those high mass projectiles. And now we move on into the Bladesmen of Baird Eithel and the House of Fingolfin, who have also experienced some fairly similar changes to what we saw with the Doriath unit. So they've again gone down to that base 5. They can upgrade twice into 9, which puts them 2 above where they were previously. But I'm also considering them to be light infantry, so they get an extra point of melee defense, bringing them from 13 to 14, making them extremely survivable in close combat. The big thing here is that I wanted to give a interesting niche, not necessarily a niche, but some interesting attributes to the House of Fingolfin Swordsmen, which is of course what they specialize in. They specialize in swords and melee defense, whereas their brother faction Feanor specializes more in heavy armor and shields and so forth. So now they're able to combine the strengths of light infantry, their mobility, their high melee defense, with the potential survivability of heavy infantry if you are willing to invest a little bit extra into them. Most of the Noldor units will also... Ooh, something terrible happening outside. Most of the Noldor units will also upgrade for a little bit cheaper, so instead of paying 120, you're going to be paying 80 to fully upgrade the Bladesmen of Baird Eithel to be greater than they are alive, at least in terms of their armor stats. Behind them, though, we have a brand new unit, and I'm actually really excited about this one. So this was made with some assets from Elder Scrolls Total War, some textures and some meshes, and we combined them with some of the things we already had, such as the Hurin bodyguard and model and things like that, and we have created the Dragon Guard of Dorlomen. The Dragon Guard are intended to be a medium infantry pick. They are capped at 7, so that's where the Bladesmen of Baird Eithel used to be. They've also got some throwing axes, which they can throw at greater distance. However, they do lose a little bit of damage to make their, something of a trade-off for that. Otherwise, they're just flat out better than other throwing axes. But unlike other throwing axes, they do have the shield breaker trait. So they will be able to bypass half of shield value from the front, which makes them, in tandem with the greater range, particularly good against, say, Valinor Slingers, for example, who would otherwise be a very big problem for the House of Fingolfin, to the point of making that matchup just a little bit too one-sided. So the Dragon Guard are quite good for what they are. They're slower than the Bladesmen. They also don't have the same melee defense, but they do have much higher damage. The Bladesmen clock in at about 9 base. These bad boys clock in at 12. So there are some choices to be made there, whether or not you want to go with a Dragon Guard front line or a Bladesmen of Baird Eithel front line. It really just kind of depends on what you want to do. If you're going for more of a rush focus build, then maybe the faster Bladesmen are a better way to do it. If you want to dig in with pikes and such, then the Dragon Guard do synergize quite nicely with the medium pikemen. And I think you're going to see a few of them in this army today. Many Dragon Guard forming up this second line. And one of the important things to note is that all Edain across the board have had their caps increased by an additional 1 in order to synergize a little bit better and to open up some new comps with the price changes that I already spoke about. And so, there's a whole bunch of these herdsmen here on the front line. They also have the shield breaker trait to give them just that little bit extra edge against some of the pesky skirmishers. It's just enough that it's not going to completely counter other skirmishers or slingers and things like that. But it will help, especially if you're playing with a rush-focused army, which if you're going to bring a ton of Herdsmen of Hithlum, it might not be the worst thing to focus on. Then it will soften your enemy up for your approach and just make things a little bit easier on you without completely outright giving the skirmish advantage to the House of Fingolfin, who are a little bit more of our melee-focused faction, as the Noldor generally tend to be, with the exception of perhaps the House of Fingolfin. So we've got 4 of them on the field today. Just all the terrible things happening outside. 2 Marines of Vinyamar, we've got some Armatar, there's that second line here of the Dragon Guard of Dorlomin, Marines, Herdsmen, we have the Arimo Arantar, another unit of Armatar, the Sons of Húrin, which is where Fingolfin is going to be hanging out today, and the Catapult here. And again, you can see that UI change tells you that's the Bladesmen Baird Eithel. If you are curious about how the artillery crews will be treated, I've simply given them the full upgraded armor values, because you can't seem to actually upgrade them unless it's in a scenario. So that's a little bit strange to me. Hopefully we can figure out how to fix that in the future, but for the time being, all catapult crews that would otherwise, start at something of a disadvantage in terms of not being able to upgrade their armor, just have the full flat-out armor value. And that's going to do for Team Blue. Let's see what our opponents, Team Red, are bringing to the battle today. And so, across the field from Fingolfin, we have the Blessed Realm of Valinor. They're going to be played today by Buzzard, and he has brought a front skirmish line here composed of, I would say, 2 units of the Sentries of Alcolande, just enough to screen your approach as Valinor. We've also got the Swan Guard of Alcolande here as well. And there have been some changes based on our initial feedback to the Valinor faction. So the Swan Guard and the Mariners have had their morale response increased from normal to disciplined in order to encourage people to actually bring these units, because previously they were a little bit too fragile on the morale side of things, and they would just run away basically at the drop of the hat. The second something, mildly bad happens to them, they would immediately run away. And so, trying to encourage people to bring them over slingers, or to bring a mix of slingers and them, we have increased their morale response traits, so they're a little bit sturdier when it comes to shocks. Over here, we've got some Mariners of Alcolande who now properly have their armor-piercing traits for their missiles. They're going to be mixed in with some Plaza Guardians of Valimar, these deadly Seraphim, extremely powerful from the front, but very vulnerable to missiles. So this entire block here could potentially be a big target for those Herdsmen of Hithlum. There's a lot of damage they could do here with that shield breaker. Over here we have some Kinsmen of Ingwe mixed in. This is the Vanyar Bodyguard, created by White in the Black Cloud. And they are a very deadly heavy infantry bodyguard unit. They have multiple HP, but they're intended to be the sort of middle ground between the Maiar and the Vanyar, offering a cheaper, more generalist option than the more specialized Maiar for keeping your commander safe. And behind them we can see some Knights of Tirion, some very heavy melee cavalry, more specialized for fighting horsemen than really anything else. A little bit further down the line, more of that phalanx that mixes the Plaza Guardians and the Mariners in together. We've also got a catapult here, which is going to contain a small detachment of the Hearth Guard of Tirion. Moving on now to the center of the red team's army, We have the Dominion of Gawrhoth. They have really benefited from this mid-tier change, as most of their units were already quite cheap, and basically all of them are low or mid-tier, so they all benefit from this with the exception of the Hishpukaraz units, which you can now afford to bring in quite great numbers, because of how cheap everything is. I got some Hishpukaraz here on the back line, looking like 2 of them. They are light skirmish cav. They have some flaming javelins that deal damage to morale. The Thorangshik Wolfborn as well, heavy warg lancers, bodyguard tier. They can upgrade their armor from 9 to 11, making them extra tanky and hard to get rid of. We've got a second line here composed of the best that Gawrhoth has to offer. These are the Hishpukaraz Wolfguard. Got some Skadahai Blood Drinkers here in the center. Skadahai Blood Drinkers mixed in with Ash Priest, which is a very deadly combination of some scary armor-piercing axemen. Out in front, we've got Hishpukaraz Warband. A whole crap ton of, I believe they are still unbreakable spearmen. So it makes a really nice sort of tar pit option here, and you can see them extending all the way across the front lines that can keep some of these squishier units safe. Gijak is chosen here on the Gawrhoth right wing, and then in behind them you're going to find another unit of the Wolfguard. So very nicely balanced here. Also, I almost forgot about them. We have some Hishpukaraz Firewolves, potentially a very scary unit if it gets around your flank or behind you, and manages to bear down upon your light or medium infantry blobs. They do shoot big gouts of flame that will pass through enemies, not something that you really want to underestimate and leave unchecked. We've got 2 of them here on the field today. We've gone now to the third and final red team army. We have the Elves of the Falas, the Falathrim, if you will, and they're going to be played by Tundra's Fox, Rangers of Brythombar with their new model hanging out here on the front lines. And behind them, you can see the Seafarers of Brythombar with their new model. The Falathrim are going to be very at home on this sort of battlefield, as basically their entire mid-tier roster all benefit from fighting in sand. They're going to get an extra, I believe, couple of attack points, which is going to make them extra deadly today. And ANGBAND gets the same thing, so we've really got 2 armies here supercharged by the terrain that they're fighting in, and it's going to be destructive without a doubt. Marines of Brythombar here, some harassment javelins, very nice to have against my my halberd blocks and many things that I can bring. Seafarers of Brythombar as well, using maces, and they can be very deadly against my mid-tier picks. More Seafarers, more Marines, yet more Seafarers all the way down the line, and then another contingent of Marines. And then we've got another regiment of the Seafarers here. I believe we've got 3 or so units of Rangers of Brythombar extending all the way down. And then on each side, we're going to have a whole bunch of light spearmen. Spearheads of Brythombar, they do have some precursor javelins. They don't do anything really special, but they are basically free damage. And then behind them, we're going to have a detachment of that same unit. And I believe that follows on the other side as well. So quite a lot of mid-range punch here. Orion Ephedune as the general's bodyguard. We'll take a look at Kier down there. He's going to be hanging out in the back with his kinsmen. And altogether, a very number-focused Falathrim army, and I believe that that is a full 20 stack that you're seeing here, which is not something that you see very often from the elves in the mod, but you will certainly see much more frequently as this patch progresses. And so that's going to conclude the army portion. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope you're excited for the new changes. Now let's jump into the battle. And this battle here is going to open up with just complete bedlam on both sides. I can see that Falathrim army encamped around that oasis, and I'm feeling in a very plucky, very dangerous mood. So I'm going to go to right to them. I'm going to walk into the jaws of all of that mid-range fire, and I'm going to see what I can get done. Tundra's Fox was apparently a little bit surprised by the fact that I brought the Mangonel. They'd sort of fallen out of favor in the meta a little bit, and unfortunately we're not really going to bring that bring the sunshine back to them, I suppose, with that initial volley, which unfortunately goes way too high up. Probably as a function of trying to shoot units that are moving. So after that I decided to turn it off. We're going to wait for them to come back, but the Mangonel is going to do incredibly well in this battle. Over here, Gawrhoth, moving to check the advance of Doriath. We can see some Hishpukaraz units moving forward. Hishpukaraz They're going to have a very bad time if those wardens get themselves set up, and they're going to open up here with some initial volleys. And that is going to head right into the wargs and into the hunters. We're going to start to see some of these models here begin to drop, especially for the Hishpukaraz hunters. Some more damage being done to them. The Hishpukaraz hunters are actually one of the most efficient archers in the game, bar basically none. They're extremely good at what they do, and they're going to do a lot of work against this very comparatively tight Doriath formation. It looks like Finrod is going to be very, very aggressive here. I don't think Carmunda expected him to be that aggressive with skirmish wargs, and so he's going to try and fall back here. He's going to send the Axe Guard of Region forward to try and check that, but Finrod is actually going to pull out at the last second, probably for the best. If these Axe Guard had managed to get in, it looks like there's maybe some warriors in there as well, and indeed they will manage to get into the cookie jar. These guys could rout off very, very quickly. They're going to toss some javelins here as revenge as they move out of the way. One of the things I think I forgot to mention is that the shield bearers and swordsmen have had their base armor increased by 1, and they still have their armor upgrades, so they can still be tankier than the Axemen, which is kind of what they're there to do. Down here, Fingolfin getting absolutely mowed down. Looks like there are 3 units of Knights of Tirion on the field today. And of course the Valinor player is going to be hyper-aggressive with them. This is a lot of melee cavalry. They've got a lot of survivability. There's really no reason not to kind of do what he's doing, although he does want to be a little bit careful. Those harassment javelins are getting some good volleys off. And these herdsmen of Hithlum, once they pop out their axes, they are going to be no slouches in melee, and it's really going to be deadly for the HP and the low model count of these Knights of Tirion. But Buzzard is going to keep it moving, disrupt this entire skirmish line with these hit and run attacks, and House of Fingolfin is not having a great time right now. They've managed to pop off a couple of volleys here, but the Valinor player has really spread things out and not concentrated too much important stuff in one place. That being said, this phalanx over here is certainly the target, and I hope that that's what the Fingolfin player is going to be going after today. Over here, it looks like the assault on the front lines of Doriath is well underway. Axe Guard and warriors pushing forward into the Hishpukaraz hunters, and this front line here is in danger of being swept away. The Hishpukaraz warband and stuff are going to try and make sure that the hunters can disengage safely, but these Doriath axe units are chaff grinders. They are going to carve their way to the Hishpukaraz warband if everything goes to plan. And more attacks here from Doriath, but the Firewolves have something to say about it, blasting their way through these units, and it doesn't look like they invested in their armor upgrades, and that's really, really gonna hurt. Yep, Axe Guard of Region pushing forward despite the losses, and they're going to collide into this Tolengauerhoth front line. Most of their infantry will get dumpstered by Doriath, but they have the missile support, they've got the numbers. I don't think the Doriath player is really going to want to be here without any sort of additional support from his front lines. The force is a little bit scattered, a little bit all over the place. I don't think that's going to do him any favors. As you can see, a vicious counterattack here by most of the Tolengauerhoth infantry against just a few companies of Doriath combined with that missile support. Again, those fire javelins do attack the morale, and it is going to be telling. Having lost about half of their number here, these guys are going to begin to flee, and I don't think the Axe Guard of Region are going to be too far behind, and now Tolengauerhoth is free to really take to the offensive here. This was kind of the teeth of that Doriath army. Now there's like lots of spear hosts. The spear hosts are things that probably should have been sent forward first. Shield bearers are following that up as well, but this is a lot of the damaging units. That's a hard loss for Doriath to lose that many of their elite axemen right off the go. Axemen of the Girdle, however, up here, and they might have something to say about it. Let's see if they get a volley off. They are indeed, and it's going to hurt. A lot of these medium and light units are going to feel the sting of those axes, but we've got the Firewolves, of course, to think about. We're going to go and take a look at them in a moment. Looks like the Valinor phalanx under fire here from the catapult, getting lucky. No stray hits managed to make their way in there. I think Buzzard is going to realize that it might be time to move forward now. Move in for the kill. These Axemen of the Girdle might get one final volley off. No, indeed, they will not. Hishpukaraz warband colliding into them. But let's go and see what's going on my side of things. It's Bedlam. It's absolute destruction. The Sarlacs are going to feast well tonight. We have collided with that front line. We are winning in some places, losing in others. But what's really important here is that we've got a lot of our missile units kind of safe from harm. So many light units here, crossbow bolts, that fire from the Urloki arcing over the lines, and it's just ugly. It is an ugly planet an orc planet, and these spear hosts of Brathambar are feeling our wrath. That Mangonel letting off a discharge, some burning discharge, and the Philothrum are definitely feeling it today. Should have wrapped it up, buddy. Should have wrapped yourselves up in some heavy armor, if you know what I mean. Marines of Brathambar, however, are well placed. They're going to do a lot of damage to my halberdiers on the way in. Lost about half of my number there. My Urloki looking a little bit bloodied. I have also sent my Bulldogs over here to deal with a lot of this chaff. They're going to be able to just grind through them forever with their 14 armor and their 2 HP. And that's going to give my Iron Shot Arbalists plenty of time to deal some damage here. Forcers of Nimbrethil, who are hiding. These are a really good anti-elephant unit. I've managed to route them off the field. But you're going to see the Philothrum route and come back many times, and it's going to be very aggravating throughout the course of this battle. But this is kind of a big deal here. So I managed to sort of bog down the Philothrum. I've got my Thralls here, I've got crossbows, and we're just peppering these units from behind, using my Balrogs here to pick on some of these units, but bad things are happening. So, the Tolan Gauderhoth infantry have come down to the aid of their ally, but this is a really nice tactic, and one that I suggest you at least try to employ in some of your battles, and I think it's an essential way to get the Iron Drakes to really have some value. So, what we're going to do is basically create a blob here with my Balrogs. They're a big, juicy target, so of course people want to go for them, especially with these Foresters of Nimbrethil. But as those blobs form, we're going to move to punish them with our Iron Drakes. You can see the Foresters of Nimbrethil managing to get into close quarters. We're going to go ahead and turn it up there just a little bit. Down goes the Philothrum General, slain in combat with the Orcs. And just as this happens, my fiery vengeance will be heaped upon the Tolan Gauderhoth infantry. Now, they're a little bit heavier, so they're not going to notice this as much, but it is going to give us the opportunity here to hit some of those Foresters, and with the loss of their general, they will, in fact, break off from that fight, and that's going to relieve a little bit of the pressure here on our Balrogs. Now, Thunderous Fox kind of sees what's going on here. It's obviously not great. These Rangers of Brathambar have been firing from these fortifications and the stakes up on the hill basically for the entire game. They are now going to be employed as a mobile light infantry reserve. So Thunderous can kind of see what I'm doing here, and he's going to move to counter it. And these Iron Drakes are extremely easy to shut down. They're coming under a lot of fire from basically everything, so that heavy armor really comes in handy. But they're only going to manage to get 1 or 2, I think, good volleys off here. They're going to just side through some of that heavy infantry, getting lucky with their shots. But the Balrogs in there as well. That 1-2 punch is just really, really nasty. But we're going to go up here. It looks like Doriath has basically been swept from the field, and that's kind of unsurprising. Their frontal assault with some of their best units before anything had been pushed out of position, etc., or engaged or tied down, it was really ill-advised having to attack uphill into that. Down here, these Wardens of the Girdle mixed in with, I believe, some Spearmen or some Axemen. They're doing great. Tyr en Leisdanen opening up here, doing a decent amount of damage, starting to bring things back a little bit. The Gijak Scout has that Gulkalab, some heavy wargs. Well, they look to be bearing down upon the Tyr en Leisdanen for a moment there, but they actually were driven back in a hail of arrow fire by the herdsmen of Eithel. And over on the Fingolfin side of things, it's really not going great. That Valinor cavalry is in behind, and the House of Coffee is a little bit of a newer player. So he's not going to know that he wants to turn around and not let them charge into the rear, because the Bladesmen of Baird Eithel would have been just fine if they had turned around. But instead, they're going to get absolutely squashed by the Knights of Tirion. Again, you always want to turn around when you're able to, and get that melee defense bonus when you are being charged. You don't want to turn your backs to your enemies, but it's way better than suffering the sort of damage that he just did there. Dragon Guard of Doloman charging into battle against these knights, but they're really better suited for fighting orcs or the Teleri infantry instead of going toe-to-toe with these Knights of Tirion. That being said, they do have a decent amount of damage. They will be able to inflict losses upon the Knights of Tirion if they decide to wait around for too long. Over in the back here, these skirmishers, however, being preyed upon by that melee cavalry. And some of them are forming up in behind them. And Buzz is going to throw a second unit of cav in here, and they're just going to kind of blob up. It's not really going to be all that worth it, but some of the units will carry forward into the Marines of Vinyamar in behind, and that is going to prevent them from actually firing those javelins and prevent that extra damage from going into the Knights of Tirion. That being said, some of the unit doesn't seem to agree with that. They're like, no, I didn't see it. He didn't touch us. He was out of bounds. And they're still going to try and throw maybe into the retreating backs of those Knights of Tedion. But it looks like they're going to get clear, and that's going to be an opportunity missed there for sure. Kuthalim Engul going toe-to-toe with the Tyrian Lights down, and they do take penalties when in the desert, being more of a forest-dwelling people, this particular unit in any case. But the Kuthalim are just not going to be up for the task, and they will be hastily repulsed. Hishpukaraz Hunters, and ooh, some nasty volleys here from the Firewolves. They're going to go right into the back of those Wardens of the Girdle, and things are going to go very badly here. I think a lot of these units got crisped, and what was once a winning fight is now turning into a bit of a slaughterhouse for Doriath. They wanted to be able to control the fight a little bit better than what they were, but after that front line was destroyed, Finrod pushed forward, and that was basically it for Doriath. They had no time to recover or regroup, maybe let some of those routing units reform, and this is basically game over. So the Firewolves combined with the Ash Priests, tossing in these light infantry. Of course they're going to rout. That's a lot of morale damage going their way, and that is all she wrote for the majority of the Doriath army. Kuthalim, however, are not going to go quietly into that good night, as they never do. And they're going to chase off some of those Vordback Gajutar, the legendary company, for Tolin Gauderhoth. Another nice rear charge here. Again, this is the sort of thing you want to be able to turn around to prevent from happening. It really does mitigate the amount of damage that you're going to take, and also maximize the amount of damage that you can do in return. Over here we have the Outriders of the Girdle. Didn't realize they were on the field today. They're actually quite good against wargs, but not so much against the Thrang Sheik Wolfborn. They do have a new model and a shield value, which is going to increase their stat line all the way up to medium cavalry, as you can see here. However, when it comes to going toe-to-toe with the best that Tolin Gauderhoth has to offer, not gonna go well for them. Against the Hishpukaraz wargs, they should trade pretty easily and probably even win that fight. But against the combination of the two, not so much. And they're gonna flee under a hail of javelin fire. One last pot shot there, and that unit is gonna manage to extricate itself. Over here, things are a nightmare. The Philothrum have been beaten in a few places, and I am currently in the process of routing off these small pockets of resistance. I've decided to combine my units into my elephant units, specifically into a bit of a goon squad here. I'm going to throw them in alongside the Mangonel crew, who have now joined the fray, having run out of ammunition. We're going to try and rout these units off as quickly and efficiently as we possibly can. They don't have a lot of melee defense, so many of those fair sea elves will fall there, and that is going to be enough to send them into a panic, especially with the approach of the Valaraukar. And over here, we've basically reformed our line alongside the Bulldogs as sort of the nucleus of our army to keep everything in check. And we're going toe-to-toe against the Foresters of Nimbrethil. Managed to deal a good amount of casualties, probably kill off about half of the Tolin Gauderhoth reinforcements. But they're going to join the fray as well, and unfortunately I screwed up and left a lot of my line open here. So I'm going to be forced to sack my Thralls of ANGBAND, throw them in the way of the Kuthalim chosen, and pull my more valuable Iron Shot Arbalists out of the fight. Over here, some Marines of Berthambar have come back from routing. Like I said, very aggravating, but still much more interesting. It's nice to know that when routing units are gone, they're not gone. And that is something that you're going to have to pay attention to. You will need to run things down and just be more situationally aware. Over here, we've managed to deal quite a lot of damage to the remaining Philothrum troops. I'm not going to be able to kill the Rhine Ephedune without a big struggle, and I have other things on my mind here, particularly routing off the Tolin Gauderhoth troops as well as I'm able. Wolfguard here going to try and disengage. They are on the verge of cracking, so this is a very risky maneuver here. He's going to try and pull them out, and I think Finrod is actually going to be successful in that. I do have my elephants and stuff over here, so I need to get them rapidly down into the back of these Tolin Gauderhoth units. I sort of expected them to rout, so I pull things up maybe a little bit prematurely. And the Kuthalim chosen are over here. However, they are being targeted down by my Arbalists, who used the valiant, can we say valiant? Forced sacrifice of my Thralls to gain a little bit of extra distance. And they are now going to scythe through those Kuthalim chosen, and that additional missile fire and the casualties that they suffer should be enough to rout them. There goes the Fingolfin General. We're going to pop over to their side of the field. Well, that should be enough eventually to send those Kuthalim units packing. More of the Philothrum have come back here. Rangers of Bethambar now joining the fray. And things are just, it's just an apocalypse down here in this little valley. Up here, Engul is just cleaning up what remains of Doriath, and you have to hand it to Doriath. They were outnumbered, taken at a disadvantage, fighting uphill, and look at the damage they nonetheless managed to do to Engul. We're here, Marines of Inyamar doing well against the exhausted Toll forces, but it's basically a slaughter in favor of Valinor. It's a little bit of an uneven matchup. Buzzard is a more experienced player, and Coffee is definitely not, but hey, we were just here to have a little bit of fun. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a struggle for Coffee in this one, but I'm sure we'll get him next time. Dragon Guard of Dol Lurman over here doing what they do best, grinding up the Teleran Swan Guard, and this is just, it's not even a fair thing. The Dragon Guard are going to absolutely brutalize these spears. This is what they're kind of best at. Shoal Hunters up here, didn't see too much from them in this fight, but I can imagine that they did quite a lot of damage to these archers up here, along with the heavy cavalry of Buzzard. And the majority of his infantry corps appears to be intact. He's still got all of his units. Vanyar, he's got a good amount of supporting infantry left from the Teleri, and we can definitely call this a solid victory on his end. Up here, Catapult being picked on by a few Knights of Tyrion, but they are exhausted and worn down to the point where the Bladesmen probably can repulse them and save their engines, but they won't really be able to do that very likely before the rest of the Valinor and Engul reinforcements fall upon them and rout them. Up here, Chosen did well enough. It was a tough fight for Doriath, let's be honest about that, but they did reasonably well, at least better than I think could have been expected under these circumstances. And they're actually still in the field today. 23 Kuthalim on a commando mission to avenge their fallen brothers. And they're going to beeline right for those Hishpukaraz. This is not a fight that they're going to win. They're going to take them on anyway. Got to hand it to them. Beleg, Thingol, and their retinue charging down those Ash Priests. We're going to pop on over to my end and see how things have evolved. Ryan Ephedun and some of the Spear Host of Berthambar have managed to rally alongside a second company of the Spear Host. I've managed to isolate a small pocket here, and I've got my my Bulldogs and my Goon Squad and whatever else I can throw in that fight, and I've thrown my Halberds over here to form a sort of defensive line. But now we've got some Thrang Sheik Wolfborn on the field today over on our side, and it's not going to go well. My Arbalists here also under attack by some Marines of Berthambar, currently in the process of defeating them. But I'm going to send my Valor Raukar over there to make sure that they die. And there's only so much I can do. I've got Bulldogs, I've got Urloki here. This is basically everything I got left. My Halberdiers, not having a great time. They're sort of surrounded on a few sides and definitely losing combat. Tired and outnumbered. They're actually going to crack in just a few moments here. But the Marines of Berthambar are also not long for this world, as my Valor Raukar charge into the rear and mess them up real good. And off they go for what may be the second or third time. I was going to free up my Iron Shot Arbalists. I'm going to be able to use them to maybe target down some of these Thrang Sheik Wolfborn. Looks like our Urloki and our elite infantry managed to shave off about a third of the strength of that unit. And they are going to have to beat feet in the face of my, frankly, astonishingly relentless ANGBAND advance. I'm going to slow things down here just so we don't miss too much. But I do want to draw your attention to the fact that my Reavers were in the thick of it for the whole time, and they did not rout until there was, maybe a handful of models left. So those chevrons really made a difference. The bonuses in the desert really made a difference for ANGBAND in this fight, and is a frankly astonishing display from the orcs on the field today. So my Urloki here, they don't like being poked with sharp sticks. Spearmen are something of a soft counter to them. But there's really not a whole lot left I can do here. Yeah, look at that. Managing to kill a few of those guardsmen. It's not going to be enough. Balrog's charging in there as well. Trying to get a piece of some of these Hishpukaraz. I can see it coming. Try and turn my Bulldogs around. But a few of them will be bowled over here. And my Halberdiers down to about 4. I think my other unit of Halberds also routed off, which was very unfortunate. These Rangers of Berthambar have now come back. I think they're going to be enough to clean the clock of my Iron Shot Arbalists. I can see the Wolfborn coming down here as well. These Rangers are kind of losing And they're going to rout there. I'm not too sure why they would, but it's probably the loss of their general, the loss of everything, being tired. Or, they're actually not that fatigued. But, nonetheless, we did manage to rout them off. I have no idea how. Kind of a miracle. I don't even think I realized that that happened when I was playing in the game. It was such a momentary blip. But in come the Throng Sheik Wolfborn. I'm going to manage to redirect the fire of these Arbalists at the last second. And we'll be able to deal a little bit of damage as they come in, but oh, it's not going to be enough. Those Throng Sheik are relentless. I'm sending in my Valaraukar as well, trying to pin them against the Iron Shot Arbalists. Maybe get off a quick shot here, but nope, that charge speed bonus is going to activate, and it's going to carry them in to my Arbalists. There's not really too much that my Valaraukar can do. Over here, my Uroloki have been killed off. My Iron Shards are now running for the hills, and I can't seem to kill this damned unit of the Rhine Ephedun. I'm going to pull my Bulldogs out of there, just trying to circle the wagons, as it were, and bring all of my tough troops back together, and just try and form like a bit of a goon squad. Valaraukar will manage to carry themselves into the Throng Sheik. Iron Shot Arbalist trying to get off a cheeky shot, but the Vorback Gashutar are going to be in there. I'm going to try to throw the Bulldogs at them, but the Vorback Gashutar are very quick, and they are, of course, cavalry. So they'll be able to pull out before my troops can really activate a charge bonus. And now the Throng Sheik are going to double back. Iron Shot Arbalists have just about had enough of this. Now I've got to pull the Bulldogs back, trying to get the Valaraukar over there to counter them. Those damned Rangers of Bethombar back again for more. And then over here my Bulldogs are swiftly destroying this unit, this isolated unit of Spearhost. Not going to manage to kill any of the Vorback Gashutar. Managed to kill off about half the remaining Throng Sheik Wolfborn. But it's just too much. It's too much. And now with the addition of the Rangers, I don't think my Arbalists are going to be able to stand this for too much longer. Rhine Ephedun now bypassing my Bulldogs and instead beelining straight for my crossbows, as they are admittedly probably the greatest threat I still have on the field here. That poor crossbowman getting double teamed. Ooh, he just got his head taken off by that crossbow bolt. And there go my Iron Shot Arbalist with another attack from the Vorback Gashutar. That's going to be it for them. That's going to leave my Bulldogs, my Valaraukar isolated. But my Valaraukar are venting their frustration upon the backs of these Rangers of Brythombar. And they are now going to break for what I believe will be the final time. And now we're going to sort of turn things up a little bit. But we're going to go see how Fingolfin is doing over on the other end of the field. I believe at this point it was basically game over. I think there are still a few Fingolfin units left. There's some Sons of Húrin fighting there. The Aidimo Arantar still relatively healthy. Dragon Guard of Dorlomen were unfortunately routed off. Looks like there's a bit of a slaughter here. Some of the Teleran units, some of the Knights of Tedion and things like that. Mariners doing their best here to take down the Aidimo Arantar. They seem to be doing a pretty good job of it. Slowly but surely. There's just too many missiles. They're just pinned in place, and they're just being absolutely slaughtered here. And that's basically it for Fingolfin. Now everyone is converging upon my position. And this is where it gets kind of cool, but also kind of like, what is going on here? So Valaraukar, still 4 of them remaining out of the possible 5. We've got a few Bulldogs in, 13 or so, and managed to rout off a unit of Marines. They're going to turn around and go back into combat against the Rhine Ephedun. There's a couple of Vorback Gashutar in there as well, kind of standing at the center of the formation, while 2 remaining Pyre Wolves continuously pelt away at my Valaraukar and my Bulldogs. I'm going to try and catch them off guard there. They're going to deftly circle back and away, but this is really a futile gesture. Most of these units are just so heavily armored that they're never going to notice that fire. Fire being, of course, most useful against light infantry or things with lower armor values from the rear and the side. Yep, so they're going to take that on the chin like the champions that they are. We're going to go up here to about 2 times speed with my Valaraukar, try to whack everybody to death. Bulldogs now down from 13 to 5 remaining. Those fallen Maiar are not going quietly into that good night. And it's really the sort of fallen angelic servants of Sauron that are still remaining. The Valaraukar and the Bulldogs doing what they can, trying to finish what they started with the Philothrum and completely kill them off. But so far, it's slow going. The Arain Ephedune just have some frankly brilliant defensive stats, and they can upgrade their armor to be very, very tanky indeed. So my Battle Round Car, and them not being particularly suited by their animation set for fighting small numbers of infantry, are really struggling to take these guys down. Battle Round Car are really more of like crowd fighters than they are duelists. And now the Valinor forces have arrived on the field, and they're just throwing everything they got in here. Those final bolts coming in, actually taking down one of my Balrogs. They're going to try and countercharge those Knights of Tirion, but they're going to hightail it out of there. We might manage to catch one of them, maybe flatten a knight or so. Or maybe that's going to be a result of getting shot with their own arrows. My Balrogs are kind of just here isolated, except for my one general, who's just casually murdering Arain Ephedune guardsmen. He's going to try and rejoin the Balrogs and maybe go for a cheeky shot there against the Knights of Tirion. I think one of them is going to fall as a result of friendly fire. But there's just so few of them left, and my Balrog are going to try and get in. They're going to miss that shot. And their weird animation set is going to take over. They're just going to kind of... Oh, there we go. Everyone gets knocked over, like so many bowling pins. And this ending is just so chaotic. All that friendly fire pouring in, completely indiscriminate, and unconcerned for the lives of these Philothrum who fought so hard. Now the Balrogs looking for a good target. Gonna smash their way through those guardsmen, kill one or so of them. It's just not going to be enough there. Take these guys down to 8, 9. They've been on the verge of routing so many times. There's just not enough here to make sure that they go. And the Philothrum, of course, have a lot of resilience when it comes to morale. Something we did intentionally to show the resilience of the Philothrum units in the story. Now I think the Tolan Gauderhoth, what remains of them, which isn't too much admittedly, the Tolan Gauderhoth force has had enough of this charade. Now they're going to charge in. Get them a little bit closer. We're actually going to kill any more of these Arain Ephedune guardsmen. The Ash Priests are going to go right into my Balrogs, and they're going to kill off one of them basically immediately. But this guy is going to carry through. He's going to go right up Main Street and just whack his way through many of these mid-tiers. Claim a few extra victims to pull into the void. And that's basically it. There's a fairly sizable Valinor force left. Tolan Gauderhoth is fairly ragtag, and the Philothrum basically don't exist. Not the closest game. There's a 17% or so difference there, but it is chaotic, it is fun, and of course it features Valinor, and I know you guys want to see more of that. So, coming down to the last few minutes here, some more javelins and stuff coming in from everyone. I think we might end up finishing it at like 84%. Now we're going to try and go for one swing, and he's going to like walk into the one part of the crowd where the Ash Priests are, and they're going to take him down. And down he goes. And that is going to be the end of the game. Very chaotic, very fun, and I was extremely impressed with how resilient the ANGBAND army was. This is of course only one game, so you can only draw so many conclusions, but I do feel really good about the changes to mid and low tier prices so far. It's allowed us to bring way more stuff. There's a way more interesting dynamic on the field, and just everyone has access to just more tools without it being so overwhelming that you still don't have to make those important choices. But what you want to bring, when you want to bring it, and who you want to bring it against. So it does feel really good. I'll take a look at some of the casualties we managed to deal here. Bulldogs with 284, Udurloki getting 151, where they were really important on our left wing, on like keeping the Philothrum at bay. They would have just overwhelmed us with sheer numbers if I didn't have my Udurloki there to punish those blobs that were forming. Over on the other side, of course, the Valoralkar did really well, and the Iron Drakes synergized extremely well with them. Those two units together bringing in about 341 kills, actually exactly 341 kills. That's a lot of dead orcs and a lot of dead elves. Halberdiers did really well. One of them managed 243, which is exceptional for an orc unit. Got some really good value off of my legionnaires as well. They were just able to kind of support the reavers on the front line, and the reavers really mixed it up. And that I would attribute to the resilience that extra chevron does give them. They've also got better morale response traits than other orc units, so they are less likely to run by default. But the extra damage and the extra damage from the terrain, the damage from the upgrades, and the chevron as well, just made those units into absolute monsters when it came to mulching through a lot of the Fallothra mid-tiers. And admittedly, there were a lot of spearmen in there, so the kill count is definitely inflated. But yeah, moving on to the mangonel. Can't attribute all of that to the missiles. We didn't get to see nearly as much, but we did see a few really nice volleys there. And I made some changes to the mangonel as well in their engine file, and it seems that they are more willing to fire into blobs. Don't quote me on that, not necessarily the case, but that's just something that I noticed in this one particular battle. And they were very useful in tandem with the Uroloki for just putting down a withering hail of fire. Literal fire that cooked a lot of the Fallothram alive inside of their light armor. Arbalists did alright. One of them was mixing it up for a while in close quarters, and they managed to get a good amount of kills, even to the tune of 113. The other unit managed to use most of its ammunition and get a whopping 207. Thralls did alright. Wretches did meh, but they are wretches. That's how it is. The rest of our team, the House of Fingolfin really did seem to struggle against Valinor. I don't think that is necessarily indicative of the matchup overall. I think it was just a newer player playing a more experienced player, and it was just a tough go. Based on what he had there with all of the axes and the Dragon Guard, I think a massed push from Dragon Guard supported by the Herdsmen would have been extremely difficult for that Valinor composition to deal with. That's a lot of pressure onto basically their entire front line. With the shield breaker on those two units, I think that they are essential for fighting Valinor and for getting the efficiency and the extra kills and putting on the pressure that you need in order to make the infantry fight really happen for House Fingolfin. Buzzard did really well, of course. Finrod did great. He was able to play the field in basically 3 different places after he managed to defeat Doriath. Doriath struggled, and Tundra's Fox also did really well against me, but I, of course, had no more numbers-focused army. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this so far. This will be the last video that I'm able to record for quite some time. So, yeah, enjoy it. I'll see you guys later. Take care, everyone.